Pamela, if you'd like to begin your talk, which is peer instruction in online synchronous sessions in a calculus course.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes, they're not full screen yet. That's it. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organisers for giving me this opportunity to talk. So peer instruction has worked well for me. I've been using it for a number of years in the traditional pre-COVID world, and I wanted to try and recreate this in an online environment. And I'll tell you about how I did that and how successful it was or was not. So just a brief overview of peer instruction, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is a method of teaching introduced by Mazur at Harvard in the 1990s in the context of undergraduate physics. And there's a large body of evidence from the past 30 years to show that this is associated with improved student learning and is therefore an effective use of class time. It involves flipping the classroom. We've spoken a little bit about that already today. So students come to class having done introductory reading on a topic. The lecturer then spends class time posing prepared conceptual questions on the topic, which we call concept tests, which address the most common difficulties. So a lecture can consist of multiple cycles of peer instruction, one cycle consisting of a brief recap of a concept, then the posing of the concept test, which students think about and vote on, then peer discussion about that question without the answer being revealed yet, and then finally voting again once they've had that opportunity to discuss. And the magic of peer instruction comes from seeing that the correct vote share usually goes up from vote 1 to vote 2, so before and after the discussion about the topic with their peers, and sometimes that vote share increases dramatically, with no further input, I should say, from the lecturer at that point. So it's purely about the discussion that's helped the learning there. Okay, so let's compare and contrast my previous experience of using peer instruction in face-to-face teaching with last semester's trial in online synchronous classes. So it's important to note that in my context, it was feasible to do whole class synchronous sessions. I completely understand for many reasons, such as time zone differences, digital poverty, etc. It may not be possible in other contexts. And as Jeffrey pointed out in the first talk, if it's possible to do it, then there's a lot of value in synchronous sessions. So it was possible in my context. So course and students should note that they're at different universities. My previous experience, I was at the University of Edinburgh. I've now changed jobs to be, I'm at Heriot Watt now, and I moved jobs during the pandemic. So I'm in this strange position of having never been to campus, met my colleagues in person or my students since I started the job last June. So hopefully that will change soon. So you'll see here that in order to do peer instruction, I need two things to happen. I need two things to be possible. I need students to be able to vote, so in some kind of polling tool, and I need them to be able to talk to a small number of people in their classmates, namely I need breakout rooms. So I could say a lot more about the finer details of these choices because I did have to make a lot of pedagogical compromises to fit with the tools that I had available to me. If you're interested in this nitty-gritty, I've written a blog post about it, which I'll link at the end. And of course, please do ask me in the Q&A about that. So, despite the compromises that were made, it did work. I did use it successfully throughout every one of the live classes in this course. So in that sense, it worked. It wasn't a disaster that I had to abandon. So how successful was it actually? So there's two aspects to this question. Did students buy into it? And did it improve their learning? Again, and this really echoes what Jeffrey said earlier, student willingness to participate. There was definitely mixed feedback from the students, which I'll show you a sample of shortly. But that's been the case previously too. Students can sometimes be skeptical about this approach because it looks so different to what they expect a lecture to be. And it feels much harder, right, than listening to a didactic lecture. But differently to the face-to-face classes, students haven't had the chance to build relationships and community with their classmates. And I think this is the key to productive learning discussions in the peer instruction format. You have to be comfortable enough with those that you're talking to expose your sort of vulnerabilities and your lack of understanding on a topic. And I unwittingly exacerbated this at the start of the course because I did use random allocation and breakout rooms. So 2 to 3 times a class, the students were thrown into a room with people that they didn't know already. And I can understand that I would find that jarring. What did improve when I changed it to fixed groups sort of halfway through the course, and they did report that they preferred that. And in terms of improved student learning, well, that's not something that I can, measure in terms of a proper research study. There's too many variables going on there. But one thing that I did notice in comparison to the face-to-face experience is that students getting the correct answer, the vote change, the correct vote share rarely changed much from vote 1 to vote 2. And this is very different from my experience in the face-to-face classes. I mentioned it, sometimes it increases dramatically. This could be down to one of 2 things. So either the questions that I posed, the concept tests, were no good, or the discussions were not generally that fruitful. Now, it is my first time teaching with the concept test in calculus. Previously, I did it for linear algebra. But these are questions that are publicly available as part of what's called the Good Questions project, which came out of Cornell probably about 20 years ago. So although I've not used them before, they are well tested elsewhere. So I don't think it's about the questions. I think, again, it's exactly what I mentioned earlier about perhaps the breakout room discussions just not being that fruitful because of people's sort of nervousness about engaging. So finally, let me end on some of the comments from students. The peer instruction way of learning is so engaging, and it has on far too many occasions made me stop and reconsider my understanding of the concepts. Peer instruction, not a helpful way to spend online class time, can end up feeling worse about the material and essentially is the blind leading the blind. And I feel like the peer groups were very interesting. I had never used them before, but they did turn out to be somewhat useful. However, I feel they're more optimized for purely face-to-face learning. And I'll end there. So please do, if you want to have a look at my my blog there. It's not live yet because I didn't have time to finish it, but I will be doing that and publishing it tonight. Thank you very much.